Welcome to the Growth Officers Association Growth Series podcast. I'm Mark Amtower, founder of Amtower Company. I'm also Vice President of Communications and board member for the Growth Officers Association. GOA is a membership organization for those involved in the growth of their companies in the government market, including C-levels, growth officers, vice presidents of business development, sales, and marketing. Anybody in the executive role who's responsible for growth. So look us up at goa-tss.org. I'm here today with my friend, longtime friend, Nick Wakeman, Editor-in-Chief of Washington Technology. Nick, welcome to the podcast, man. Pleasure to have you.
Yeah, nice to be here. And I have to say, as I was listening to your intro, I was thinking, shouldn't every employee of every company be a growth officer?
Marketing is everything.
That's right.
I definitely agree. So 1996, was it, when you started at WashTech under the tutelage of Steve LeSueur?
Yeah, well, Steve and I were co-workers then. It was a different, Trish Williams was the editor then. But yeah, I worked up with Steve for several years, many years. Probably the best boss I ever had.
A good guy. I haven't been in touch with him in a while, but that's beside the point. So when did you take over as editor-in-chief?
I think it was about 2005. That was when so before that I'd been, I was a staff writer, senior writer, then I was senior editor under Steve, and then I was the last man standing, I guess, and they had to promote me or get rid of me.
Well, getting rid of you wasn't an option.
Yeah.
Okay, so my favorite editor in the market for years and years, not because I write for you, but because you do a lot of things in and for this market that are extraordinary.
Oh, thank you.
And you are to be complimented publicly for that. So there you go. So let's take a dive into this. We're recording this a week or two before the end of FY, and we have no budget.
Again.
I think the last time we had one passed on time was before I was born.
Yeah. It seems that way.
Yeah.
I feel like I've almost become desensitized to a continuing resolution. It's sort of like, oh, okay, I'll believe it, which probably is not a good thing, but it seems like we're always on the brink.
It would be better if we had one.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
But in lieu of a budget, a continuing resolution would be nice.
Yes.
In lieu of a continuing resolution, we're in deep kimchi. But that's beside the point. NDAA usually, though, passes without much to do.
Yeah.
Is it gonna this year?
I think so. I mean, it's probably, whether you're in the defense industry or even the civilian industry, it's probably the single most important piece of legislation outside of the budgets each year. Because there's so many things that go into that. Changes in procurement rules, things like that. There's so many amendments and things that work into it. So it's really something that everyone should track really closely.
Mm-hmm. So let's back up a few minutes.
Okay.
You've been writing about this market for 30 years.
Just about, yeah.
And I unfortunately remember a little longer than that, but or fortunately, depending on your point of view. What are the sea changes in the government market over that period of time? I mean, you started with the advent of email and websites in the government market, and that in itself was a revolution.
Oh yeah, I mean, just quickly with WT, when I started there, we had a website, but it was only updated like every few weeks when a new print issue would come out. And then by 2000, we started doing daily news. And I think that's one of the things that the pace of change has just picked up so much with the technology. And it's a curse, but also it's a great benefit to, I think, all of us, because the ability to, if you're an agency, the ability to connect with your constituents and serve them better has just exponentially grown. And we're still if you think about the cloud, and you think now AI, we're still just scratching the surface of doing that.
Yeah.
When you think of the kind of services that like VA is trying to provide, and the Centers for Medicaid, CMS, and those folks. I mean, so the technology changes have just been huge, and then the way the government is trying to buy, that's really morphed. I mean, I know we're probably going to eventually talk about GWACs and MACs and those kinds of things, but the government, although it'll never be like a commercial marketplace, it's getting closer and closer all the time, I think.
Yeah, it's going to get closer, but we still have those regulation things
Right.
that make us radically different than a B2B situation.
Yeah. And we need them. I mean,
Yeah.
it's taxpayer money. So
Yeah, no argument at all. So from your point of view, how are contractors keeping pace with this? I mean, obviously we know some that are, because they're winning business.
yeah.
But I saw an article the other day, 205,000 contractors were mentioned. I think that's very conservative, at least as far as SAM registrations go. But
Yeah, I think for the most part, contractors have kept up, and in many cases, they've sort of driven the change. You see a lot of contract, pure services like professional services firms. There's still a lot of them, but the more successful companies are really marrying technology into their services, and that includes small businesses and large businesses are doing that. So that's a big change. And I think that's a change that we're, going to continue to see, especially as, the advent of AI and then quantum coming right after that. So yeah, there's a lot of change in the market.
have you had a lot of PR pushes for our AI company does this? Can we get in your publication?
It's funny. It reminds me in a way of after 9/11, when everybody suddenly was a Homeland Security company,
Right.
and everybody now is talking about, oh, we do AI, and I think people, and on the marketing side, it's sort of like that a shift in the way they think. They're trying to find, okay, where do we do AI? And because AI has been around a long time, and so I think part of it is trying to, put lipstick on the pig, so to speak, and
Right.
call it AI. And a lot of it is real. I mean, because there's so many commercial companies now that can come in and augment what traditional contractors are doing.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. AI's been around forever. They use it in simulation. Your phone uses it,
Yeah.
has for a while. The generative aspect of AI is what's new, exciting, scary, all kinds of
Yeah.
things, especially in an election year,
Yeah.
because you don't know what's coming through that's real or imagined or whatever.
Yeah, it's AI in the market it's surprised the generative AI. It's really where it's gotten its biggest foothold so far is in the marketing and BD aspect of it, because a lot of AIs they're very good writers. You give them the right information, the right prompts, and they'll write your proposal for you.
It's those prompts that do it, and it's embedded in LinkedIn now.
Yeah.
Do you want me to rewrite this post? Can I rewrite your headline? And I had it rewrite my headline, and it wrote it better than I did, so I used it.
I do that a lot, because you get stuck sometimes. You write something, and you're like, I don't know, what should, so I'll drop it in the AI, and sometimes I use it verbatim almost, but a lot of times it just helps me think about it in a different way.
I ask it for topics. I want to write about this general area. Give me some specifics. And it gives me some good ideas. How do you think it gets stuff for you? So let's focus a little on the individual contractors, particularly those who are successful, regardless of size, because you've been talking to these people. Your top 100, your Fast 50. You meet with and talk to and watch a lot of companies. What are the characteristics of a successful contractor?
Yeah. I think probably the biggest thing is focus, sort of understanding what you do and what you want to do and how you get there. And that focus is on, also means having the ability to say no. And I remember several years ago interviewing, this was in the early days of the web coming into the government. This company was very good at building websites that were some of the early sort of e-commerce
Transactional sites.
Yeah, transactional sites. And I remember him saying that he says, we've been turning down business because companies are coming, customers are coming to us saying, oh, can you make my brochures? They're like, we're not in the brochure business. But he said it was hard in the beginning they were a small business to say no because it was real money. But he said, no, we are going to be, this is what we're going to be. And they were very successful. So I think focus is a big part of it, knowing when to say no. Another part is there's some companies I've talked with that have described to me what I'm going to call sort of a lens at how they look at the market. One, to name a name, American Systems Corp. Employee owned. I remember interviewing their now retired CEO, Bill Hoover, and he talked about that. He said they think about the president's oath of office, which I wish I could say off the top of my head, but I can't.
Right.
But he said we think about what he says and does what we're doing help him fulfill that oath.
Kind of like the Jack London approach.
Yes. Oh, yeah. CACI is a great example of understanding and having a lens to look at the market. Yeah. But he said that's how we make our decisions. And sometimes it's like, again, it sort of goes back to saying no. No, that might be a nice piece of business, but it's not who we are because we're this here.
Yeah.
So I think that regardless of size, that's what we see.
I'm going to make a note to talk to Hoover sometimes.
Yeah. And so I think another part of it, and this is where the difference between the other part of it is being willing to adapt and try new things, and that's where you really see the difference between small and large companies because small companies just have they don't have much margin for error.
Right.
Where a CACI, a Leidos, SCIC, those companies, sure they make mistakes and they get hurt, but it's not as devastating as a small. So with the small, it's a little scarier environment.
So what would be the success factors for a small?
For small, again, focus. I think taking advantage of the small business programs that are out there, but not becoming addicted to them. Take advantage of them. Use those to establish relationship with customers and long term. Being there long term. We're seeing it's a really interesting phenomenon right now that we've seen, I guess, the last couple of years of small business. The dollars going to small businesses is going up, but the actual number of transactions has flattened or gone down. So more dollars going to fewer small businesses. And I'm not sure how that's going to play out because there are, tens of thousands of small businesses in the market. So I think, if I was had a small business, I would be thinking, focus, customer, what we do well. But I think I would also be, talking to investment bankers, looking at, there's so much private equity money out there now, and you don't necessarily have to sell your company. You can take on a minority investor who'll give you the resources either to make your own acquisitions or to invest in new technologies and strategic hires and those kinds of things. So I think that's where they should be,
I think
focused.
Picking the right investor could also provide you some adult supervision.
Exactly, yes. Yeah, because there's a lot of, this market has produced a tremendous number of really great leaders. And there's some that are retired, semi-retired, that are working with these private equity firms or are out there, willing to consult. And I think there's a big brain trust out there to tap into.
Yeah, I try to stay in touch with the few that I know. I know you know a lot more than me, but I don't want them to leave the game.
Yeah.
Because they are such a wealth of knowledge in very specific areas, oftentimes, focused on particular service areas or DoD components. And, you just, Hoover,
Yeah.
Give me a break. Don't go away, Paul or Bill. I need you.
Yeah.
I have small companies that need your help. So this is a Growth Officers Association podcast. What elements do you see Number one, why is growth necessary, and what are the elements to get there?
Oh, well, growth is absolutely necessary. Otherwise, you're going to be left behind, because you need growth to invest in new technologies, to, scout out the market, find, because the market is very crowded, and so you need to always be trying to find that adjacent area where you can grow and capture market share and get out ahead of your competitors, differentiate yourself. That's probably the biggest factor. One of the biggest factors to growing is being able to differentiate yourself, but it's also one of the hardest things to accomplish, because you can look at company websites, you can, even when we talk to government, there's a lot of times that they have a hard time distinguishing between what's this company versus this company. And so then it becomes a lot of times that on the, a race to the lowest price, which is really unfortunate. We still, even though LPTA has sort of faded away, it's still there.
It'll have a new name soon.
Yeah, that's true.
It always does.
Yeah.
So what part does relationships have in that?
Oh, it's crucial. And it's some people, we do these roundtables sometimes that we start off with a technology topic, and within the first 10 minutes of the conversation, we're talking about people. And so this is very much a people-driven market. So the relationships you have at the agencies, the relationships you have with, partners and competitors, those are really, critically important. You can, you get better insights into what's actually happening. You can talk to somebody, especially in the agency, and if you have a trusted relationship and understand their problem, it can help you, as you build your solutions, but it can also help you guide them, saying, hey, this is really a better way to go instead of going over here. And that's one thing I think we're starting to see more of, probably not enough of, are contracts being driven more by outcomes than requirements. There's, the vast majority are still requirements, but you're starting to see those where the government is saying, this is what we want, and then people shape their solutions to get to that, instead of saying, this is what we want, and we want, 500 hours of, software development, 500 hours, and people go in and check those boxes. So.
Yeah, checking the boxes does not cross the finish line.
Correct.
I had an interview last week with Larry Allen of Allen Federal, and he said one of the top issues he hears from program managers and others is they don't get me across the finish line.
Yeah.
They may check the boxes, but my goal is still this far out.
Yeah. And it's, while procurements have gotten faster, you still often see by the time, you go through the pre-award stuff, you do the award, and then the protest, that the agency ends up with something, what they were contracted for in the beginning, they no longer need, or their need has changed. Yeah. So I think government needs to be more flexible in how they procure things, so they can sort of change on the fly or do. I mean, that's why you see more OTAs, because they can do things in more increments and have little.
That's a great segue to my next topic.
Oh, okay.
How the government procures. So you started in '96. In '96, I was already consulting on the first IDIQ ever awarded, the Super Mini contract at PRC. Not that I'm that old, but
I thought you were going to say DS. I forget about Super Mini, but DS, the Defense
Enterprise
Information something. Yeah.
We'll look to other people to remember. Acronyms. But Super Mini, number one, it was fun to work with. But right after Super Mini, I think SOUP launched as the first GWAC ever, and we're talking the 90s acronym SOUP stuff, but procurement radically altered then. What is your recollection of what was going on then, and how did it evolve to where we are today?
Yeah, well, I think in those early days there were SOUP being the exception. I guess because that's so hardware focused. Was yeah, and that's actually the big change. some of the early ones, like I'm thinking ITOPS and, DS.
ECS.
Yeah, more professional services, IT services driven. But I think so I think two things happen. With the government now has this huge installed base of technology. They don't necessarily need to buy more technology. They got to figure out how to better use what they have and migrate it to the next generation. So you've seen so you used to see like services, IDIQs, technology, hardware ones, and those are sort of coalescing.
Yeah.
I mean, soup is a great example. There's going to be more services on that than ever before.
Maybe some standalone services.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. That's what a remarkable journey that contract has been on. But you see, the GSA with the schedule, consolidating all those different schedules into one. You sort of see that convergence of technology, services, product. And so I think that's, it's made getting on those contracts even more important.
Mm-hmm.
But as our friend Guy Timberlake likes to say, they're not the only, just because you're not on one doesn't mean that you're kind of shut out. But
right.
They are a great passport to getting in there and talking to customers.
Easy to use, especially at end of FY.
Yeah.
But, you mentioned OTAs earlier. The apparent growth, and I say apparent because I don't follow it that closely, the apparent growth of the use of OTAs has seems to be real. Yes, no, maybe?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think the strength of the OTAs is that ability to start with a concept. And I think companies that bid on them, they actually do start off submitting white papers, and then they make a selection from those white papers and start little, pilots or proof of concepts. And then it goes to, there's these different phases until they get to a full production sort of contract. And sometimes they have to switch from an OTA to a more traditional contract to do that production part. But I think there's some where they're sort of writing it in from the beginning, how to get to that point, because they usually end up with just
What's
one.
the difference between an OTA and a SIBRA then? Because that same kind of process.
It's a very similar, except OTAs, there's not the small business aspect of it. But yeah, that's a great example. And we've seen SIBRAs grow too.
They're extraordinary.
And GSA, SIBRAs, you have phase 1 and phase 2, and then
phase 3.
Phase 3, but often in phase 3 things die away.
They either die away or you're arguing with the government about who owns the IP.
Yeah.
So.
And GSA, I know at one point was trying to work on a vehicle where when you got to phase 3, you could kind of market to everybody, not just that customer
client agency. Yeah. Whatever happened to that? That was a great idea.
No, we need to follow up on that.
Yeah. Call somebody.
Yeah.
you know everybody. Yeah. So, I mean, we've already touched on the AI thing, but I started seeing a lot of requests come in for endorsements for everybody's doing AI with RFPs, and I'm really
using AI to respond to an RFP.
Yeah.
We hear a lot about. I mean, you see that all over the market now.
I mean, there was like 30 of them in the first 3 or 4 months of this year that came to me. I don't know how many came to you. Probably twice that.
Yeah. But yeah, it's remarkable. But I think with adult supervision, AI is great.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't, you can't just turn it over to the AI, obviously.
No. Have you had any of the, like Lofeld endorses procurement sciences, and everybody knows Bob in the procurement or the RF or the proposal side of things, and his endorsements were something.
Oh yeah, they were the first folks I talked to about AI in proposal, writing your proposals and things like that. But I felt that they really had a lot of you got to ask it the right questions, you got to check it, you got to read it. But it does, I mean, the quality putting aside accuracy, the quality of the writing comes out of AI is very good.
Yeah.
I mean, I ask the AI sometimes grammar questions like, hey, should I be using affect here or effect here? When do I
I hate when
hyphenate?
that happens.
When do I need a hyphen here? And but one of my favorite uses of AI, I was covering a speaker from NIST, and she was talking about AI things, but part of what she was talking about, I just could not understand. There were some terms that she was using. I Googled the terms, still didn't understand. So I went to the AI and I said, what is this? And the AI and I had this conversation. The AI answered something and I wrote back. I said, well, does it mean this? And they're like, no, it's more like this. And we went back and forth 3 or 4 times. Then when I wrote my story, I put that section in the AI. I said, okay, did I get this right? And they're like, oh yeah, but tweak this. You may not want to, it was sort of like talking with you or another person. It was really remarkable.
Yep. It's frightening, but if you want it to work for you in the RFP side of things, you've got to feed it a lot of IP from your private stash.
Yeah.
And then your upper management goes, hold on, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
And please don't tell the lawyers.
Yeah, the version that I use is, I'm still using the free version. So they don't, they're not, keeping this, it's I don't have to feed in any proprietary, just what I'm writing.
Right.
That's all I put in there. So.
Right.
And it'll often, depending on the question I ask, it'll tell me, it says, well, we haven't been updated since April. I think that's the cutoff of the one I'm using now. So if it's anything more current than that, we don't know about.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Let's migrate.
Okay.
Let's talk about organizations in our market. They play an extremely vital role, critical role.
Yeah.
So we have, AFCEA, we have PSA or PSC, ACT-IAC, NDIA, on and on.
The growth officers?
Growth officers, shoot me. Do you ever speak at these?
Not really. I mean, I've moderated.
Pay attention, people. You should have Nick speak.
I'm a moderator. That's usually the role I'll play at events and things, more so than a speaker.
How often do you know more than the people you're moderating? Don't be modest.
I'd be honest with you. They're always smarter than I am. I always learn something as a moderator.
I always learn something as a moderator too, but I also sitting there thinking, how'd this moron get on the stage? A sponsorship. But there's no necessarily hierarchy to this, but I'll give you an example. Client called and said they work in San Diego. They really needed to talk to somebody at Lockheed at a particular level, and they weren't getting any calls back. Gee, what a surprise, right? You call an SI in a major metro, and they aren't calling back. I said, you ever hear of AFCEA? And they go, yeah. And I go, the person that you want to talk to is the vice president of events at the San Diego chapter of AFCEA. Why don't you join and attend a few meetings and introduce yourself?
Yeah. And that's, these associations are such a great conduit for information on the market, but also that aspect of it. And you asked earlier about relationships, and that's the real power, I think, of these associations, is that they find a topic that brings people together. And I think a lot of times, because I know from our events that we produce, I think part of it is people are just like, okay, we had our last one was on NASA. That's about NASA. I kind of like NASA. But they come more to talk to the other people that are there.
Right.
Exchange business cards. And I think our content is really good. So I know they learn something, but I think there's as much value from that face-to-face interaction. And
Right.
I think, especially industry to government, I think these events are, sometimes the only way to get in front of a government person now.
FaceTime. Yeah. And you may have to stand in line for a few minutes at the end of the talk, but that's time well spent if you get to the front of the line.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
So give me some wrap-up thoughts here. What's important for people to know? Let's start with a slightly different bent on that. If people want to talk to you, if people want to get something into WashTech, what do they need to do?
Well, my email is nwakeman@washingtontechnology.com. But, talk to me if you see me at an event. Don't hesitate to come talk to me. Give me your card. But I have to be patient and be persistent, because I do get a lot of emails and things like that. And sometimes I'm just like, no. But then, but let me also know, like I got an email today from someone who had read an article I did last week or the week before and said, hey, I saw this article, made me think that you might be interested in talking to these other people. And I was like, well, yeah, that's a great idea. And I responded to that one. So we'll be setting up a call sometime soon. And then a lot of times, there's a company that executives are in town this week, but I can't, meet with them. But again, they also knew sort of what I was writing about and what WT covers. And so they sort of understood, okay, he's looking at how companies are growing, new markets companies are moving into, those kinds of things. But read us but also just kind of be patient, because it may take me a little while to get back to you.
Yeah, I would imagine you and Ross Wilkers are a tad on the busy side.
Yeah.
So let's take this to a logical conclusion, if you will. What's your advice for new entrants into our market?
So for new entrants, I would. There's several things I think you need to do. No, but so I'm going to think of new entrants as companies coming in with a technology, with some sort of emerging tech, something. That's what you kind of need. You can't just come in and say, oh, we do IT services, because no one's going to pay any attention.
Nobody else does that.
So understand, have a great deep understanding of what you do, how it can help a customer, and the more specific that customer is, the better. And then understand who's already serving that customer, and that becomes your customer. Is in the beginning anyway. You want to find out who the prime is, how you can help that prime win more business at that agency, how your solution can fit into theirs to benefit the customer. And that's sort of the very beginning. And then from there, you can grow and get your own prime contracts, but you have to start off as a sub, as a partner. And the whole partnering ecosystem has changed tremendously. There's still a lot of transactional sort of relationships where it's a specific opportunity, but more and more we're seeing, big players to mid-size to the smallest, creating sort of longer term relationships where, like, you and I will build a solution that we can sell to 10 agencies instead of you and I working on this specific RFP.
Right.
Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It would make sense to somebody in the market.
Yeah.
May not make sense to a new entrant.
Yeah.
But they'll get there.
Yeah. And of course, they should read Washington Technology.
Learning about the market, WashTech is a great place to learn what is going on and who's doing what.
Yeah.
So, as you know, I've been reading it for a while and writing for it for a while, but I'm not on the contracting side. I'm just on the marketing side. This has been a blast. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Anytime.